what I wanted to talk today about was creative chaos and osmosis and my my creative story and what works for me. And I hopefully feel that there'll be some carryover. And it's always interesting to see how other people operate and work and make stuff happen. So I just wanted to share with you my journey to how I got where I got. I'm going to do the share screening. I have some slides, and I'll try and keep it super simple and clean. So I was born in Czechoslovakia, and my parents defected when I was 4 years old, and we came to North America. I'm just going to leave this up while I'm talking. But I came from a communist country, and I came to North America. I didn't speak the language. I went to about 12 different schools by the time I was in high school, and I think that's definitely formative in my journey in terms of always being adaptable. And I think for an editor and for a filmmaker, being adaptable and being able to roll with the punches and shake it up all the time is a really valuable asset, because we don't live in a vacuum. We don't work in a vacuum as creatives. We're always interacting with other people. And I think it's really important to be able to adapt and do that stuff. So my father is, this image here is just us when we came over. It's kind of funny. My father was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame last year. And I played professional hockey as well for 10 years. And that's part of my journey of being a creative. And there's a lot of carryover, and I'll get to that, in terms of pro sports or any kind of like team activity and how that translates creatively into filmmaking, film editing, and any kind of that creative journey. There's a lot of carryover, and it's really, really curious. So let me go that. Oh, that's my dad. I just want to show. So he played for the Red Wings. I grew up in Detroit before I moved to Los Angeles. That's his card, which I have a whole bunch of in my office. So where it came from, like, I always think that, where does creativity come from? And I think it always comes from all the things that are around you. We're all curious people. We're all looking for stimulation, looking for things that trigger us, that make us excited and all that. And for me, it was my mom and dad starting out, because I was in a new country. I didn't speak the language. So I really relied on my parents. My mother was a photographer, and my father was a professional hockey player. So I had two outlets. I'd go with my dad to the rink and play hockey and do that stuff. And my mom was always taking photographs, and she would take me with. I was either the model or like sitting somewhere, so she'd take photos, but she would always talk me through what she was doing. She would say, I'm framing you this way, or like, I want a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. So she was always talking about the process of how she was visually, framing shots. And I think that's really important, because at an early age, I didn't understand what she was doing, but it was through the repetition, I would learn certain things. And then when I started taking my own photography, I would always have her voice in my head, like, try and frame it properly. Like, look for creative angles, look for background and foreground and middle ground. It's not just putting a camera up and snapping. The other thing that was really formative for me was growing up. My dad was always gone playing hockey, so my mom would take me to the movies, and I didn't speak English, when I was 4 or 5 years old. So the first movie I saw was Jaws in a drive-in with my mom. And then, that was like 1975, whatever. And then after that, I remember I made my mom take me to Star Wars like 6 times in 1 week, when the original Star Wars came out in 1977. And I know it's a touchstone for a lot of people, but, as someone who didn't speak English and was just like watching stuff, how could you not fall in love with filmmaking and storytelling and everything when you see like movies like that in person as a child? Like, that's really an effective and affecting thing that happens. But my mom would also take me to like Annie Hall, and she would take me to all these foreign films, because she was home alone. My dad's gone. I'm with her. I'm her, only child at that time. So I'm watching films I shouldn't be watching, pretty much like adult things and more formative things that, looking back, I would never think that I would choose that. An 8-year-old doesn't say, I'm going to go watch Annie Hall this weekend. It's coming out, new Woody Allen film. So I think that was the start of when I realized, and the whole point of this half-hour speech, and I got a timer, I'm trying to keep everything coordinated, so bear with me. But that was the moment I realized that My creative journey was basically formed on osmosis. Everything that comes in through my eyes, my ears, my mouth, my soul, everything comes in and gets stored somewhere. And I honestly believe that subconsciously I can pull from that reservoir of experiences, of films, of books, of movies, of art, of smells. That's my internal library that I pull from to be creative. I love to watch movies, obviously, even now, like everyone does. And there's no better feeling than being affected by a movie where it really strikes you and you watch something and you're like, wow, how did they do that? Like you're just totally, taken on a journey. I honestly believe that that happens more often than not for me as a creative is by ingesting as much as I can. And I think there's no limit. Like the brain is obviously like the biggest supercomputer on the planet, and everyone talks about storage and whatnot. But I just think that there's more than enough room. You can't like inundate yourself. I watch at least 2 movies every day, no matter what I'm doing. Half of that is to see what's out there. Half of that is to revisit other films so I can see techniques and revisit a film for that specific purpose of why is this film effective and reverse engineering the film. So there's, you can watch The Godfather, you can watch whatever film you want, and we've all seen it and you know what's coming, but I like to break it down and be like, why is this working? And I ingest it that way and say, okay, why does this scene work? And as an editor, and we were just talking with Maxim previously, as an editor, I'm working in micro and macro at the same time. I'm cutting a scene, but that scene has something that happens before it, something happens after it, and it's also one scene in a 2-hour movie. So if that scene is working, that's great. But if the scene before it and after it aren't working, or there's a bump, if you watch the film and it's something you get taken out of it, then there's something wrong. So you always have to be on the fly, making these adjustments as an editor. And I think as a creative person, you know when something's working and you know when something isn't. You may not know the reason why it's working or not, but you have that internal gut feeling that it's not what I want. And sometimes you need to vocalize it or verbalize it. Sometimes you have to bounce it off someone else to find out why that is. But you have to be able to bounce around. So let me just bounce through here. Speaking of bouncing through. So I was doing all the talking and forgot to show you, but my mom, so this is my mom, she's a photographer. She gave me my first camera when I was like 5. So I have a nice Nikon manual camera. And so that's when it started for me. As a storyteller and a film editor, I still work with visuals. Like it's when we look at something, the easiest way to tell a story is visually, I think. You show someone a photo and you have this impression, you have an emotional reaction to it. It's a still image. It's one frame. So if you can tell a story with one frame, then you're well on the way of telling that story and being good about it. So I started with my cameras there and seeing that. My entry into filmmaking was in 1980 when my dad won Best Star of the hockey game, and he won this Panasonic camera and a VHS tape deck. So he brought it home and he said, "Here you go, do something with it." So I started filming like Christmas time. If we go on a trip, I would videotape everything and I would use this. And this camera, like if anyone who knows of a 1980 camera, that camera is like 20 pounds. The VHS deck that you'd wear on a shoulder strap was like 15 pounds. And so it's really heavy, and it would only shoot for maybe an hour because of the battery time. So you had to be very selective with what you shot and what you captured. And my biggest realization and the point that I became a film editor was at 12 years old when I realized I had another VHS deck at home, and I knew that I could film something. And then from one VHS to another one, I could choose which shot I wanted to play and then record it onto the other tape deck. So at that point, I realized I was doing nonlinear editing in terms of I choose which shot comes when, and I can place that on another VHS and choose the order of it and then be able to tell a story. Because when we film stuff, and any creative, when you start something, you're spraying, right? If you're filming, you're like, I'm going to film this, I'm going to film that, I'm going to film everything, all these little pieces and parts. You're not thinking about the edit at that point. You're just making shit happen and you're just capturing as much as you can. Then you look at it later. And I would think that other creatives are doing the same thing. It's like you over create and then you pare it back and then you refine it and you make it better and better and more concise, more elegant until the end. So that was at 12 years old. I knew that was something I wanted to do. And here's what creativity means to me, and here's how I approach it. So we have osmosis. I'm seriously, absolutely sold on the fact that the more I can ingest through sports, through music, through life experiences, through film, it gets stored in my brain, and I know I can recall it. I think one of the greatest gifts of an editor, if you have it, if you can have that, is to be able to look at all the footage. For example, on Deadpool that I worked on for 10 months, there were 550 hours of footage, which is a lot. It's a lot. We were talking earlier that it took 16 weeks working at 40 hours a week just to watch all the raw footage once. So that's just, thinking about that, like that's a lot of footage. That's 4 months just to watch all the footage once. That's before you even start making decisions or changing your creative output about anything. But after the film was done, I was able to forget those 550 hours and move on to the next project. So the brain and the subconscious is supremely adept at being able to ingest, organize it somehow in your own brain, and for me, and then be able to recall certain things as needed. But I've never come to a place where I ingest so much stuff that it overwhelms me. I think somehow the subconscious takes care of it for you. But if it's not coming in, you can't pull from it. So those are the four main sources that I use to be able to go through that and be able to do that. Talking about hockey, one thing that's interesting that I found was with professional sports, I played with the Los Angeles Kings organization and the New York Islanders. There was one thing that I realized working as a team and being creative, what was really important was everyone has a role on a hockey team. I was a goal scorer, so my goal was to, I was supposed to score goals. There's fighters, there's aggressive people that are on the team. That's their role. There's defensive specialists that are doing their role. A team would always work really well until someone started doing a different role that they weren't tasked with doing or they weren't adept at. I'm a goal scorer. If I go and try and fight people and try and be aggressive that way to change the complexion of the game, I screw up the team effort. I'm good at something, focus on that. And everyone on the hockey team knows what they're supposed to do in sports, and they focus on that. And things get out of whack when you try and overstep your bounds. And that's not saying that you can't adapt or change or whatever, but at that given time, you have a role to do. And that's the same thing in a collaborative filmmaking atmosphere, being a film editor. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to work with the director, help them tell their story, do my best at telling that story, but I shouldn't be out there saying, oh, we need a different VFX shots and this song, this composer sucks. Like, it's a hard business for anyone. And creatively, we all want to work with people that we either respect or like, or make us feel good, or we can bounce ideas off. And I think in Hollywood, there's nothing worse than working with assholes. And you'll do that once or twice if you have to. But after that, you choose not to, because life's too short. And we want to work with people that inspire us, that make us feel good, that help us get better. And I've had it. Like, there's too many assholes out there. I cut them out of my life, especially this last year. I'm sure everyone, with the pandemic and everything that's going on, we're very selective of what we do, who we talk with, who we spend our energy and time with. And I think as a creative, there is a reservoir inside us that we have to keep kind of full, and we have to be selective with what we give away. Ingesting for me, super awesome. Putting it out there, I want to be as selective, and I'm especially selective in the jobs I take, because I don't want to commit 1 month, 2 months on a feature film, 9 months, 10 months to something. If it's with someone who I don't respect or want to spend time with, or it's a project I don't want to work on. So that's just an overall, quick little view on my stuff on that one. So that was hockey. We're talking about the roles of a team. Let me bounce through. Music. You know what? Whenever I'm editing, and I don't know how it works for other people, but if I'm editing or reviewing stuff, I usually have music playing in the background, and I usually have like either ambient music or something drone-like that kind of masks out the rest of the world and gives me this little creative bubble to work in. And it's something I've listened to, it's songs I've listened to before, but I find that having that works for me. And even to the point that if I'm editing, I'll have a familiar movie on in the background or something on the side if I'm working, only because, again, through osmosis, I feel like I'm sucking some of the energy from a movie, and maybe that'll translate into my show. So anything that's comfortable, familiar, that I've seen a lot, that is not going to be popping up in terms of like the visual and audio, but just something it's a comfort blanket. It's like if I'm surrounded by the exquisite work of my heroes in the filmmaking world, if they're in the room with me, then I just feel that maybe I can glean some of that off it and move forward with that. So again, and everyone's different. Some people work in silence. I like to have some music, some kind of flow, some kind of rhythm happening. Music experiences. Again, this is life. I don't think a creative person can exist without experiences of going places, of things happening to you that you can pull from. I mean, in the last year, there have been so many stories on the news that I've heard that are just like mind blowing of where things that happen to people and whatever. If you just sit in your house and say, I'm a creative, I'm just going to make stuff in my little cave and that's it. Again, osmosis, you're not pulling from life experiences. Do as much as you can. Yes, the last year has been extremely limited. But that gave me a chance to catch up on like books. I buy books all the time. I have a stack of 30 books that have been there for 2 years. I finally got to attack some of those books because I'm stuck at home. But again, it's like as much as you can experience, that will translate into the storytelling process and whatever creative task you're doing. I just honestly feel that there's shit that happens in real life that's completely out of the realm you would not even believe. And if you're in the United States over the last year, there's stories obviously at the highest level that you couldn't even make that. You couldn't sell that script. You couldn't sell our political story over the last year to any studio 5 years ago. They would laugh you out of the room and be like, that could never happen. So honestly, go out there and experience things, because that's going to, again, feed your creative engine and feed your creative soul. And for me, it's like trying to get in as much as I can in a day is really important. Let me bounce through here. Same thing. I was just talking about films. I watch 2 films a day at least. It's important to me. I want to live in that world. I want to be surrounded by the feeling of my heroes. And it's a comfort blanket for me to watch these films, but I always revisit, and I'm always trying to find something new when I'm watching these films to take away from that. And, my role as a film editor, here's what my job boils down to. Film editing is creation, manipulation, and juxtaposition. It's getting familiar with the footage. It is creating from scratch, from whole cloth, at least one scene that works. And we were talking with Maxim earlier that sometimes I'll edit the end of the film first, because I know I have all the footage. I know I have all the pieces and components, and I know that I can make it really work. And so the final scene becomes the keystone, and I'll work backwards because I can build into it. You don't always have to start at the start of a film and say, all right, scene 1, let's start editing. I find creatively, I resonate with a scene. I resonate with, a couple pages that work for me. And that's where I go and start, because I know that I can make it really work. And it's also a trick for me, for the directors and producers. If I'm comfortable and really familiar with the scene and I know I can cut the shit out of it and make it really work, they're comfortable all of a sudden. If I haven't worked with them before, they're like, wow, that really works. That's great. Can we keep this level up? I like what you did. Let's do that for the whole film. I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that for the whole film. So find, whatever creative endeavor you're on, go to your happy spot, go to something that you're comfortable with. Especially if you're collaborating with other people, because it's not that you're trying to impress them. It's that you're trying to just show that you understand the project, that you understand the narrative of what's happening. And I think that's really important, and showing that you're a professional. Again, with film editing, average film has 1,300 cuts. Every cut affects flow, rhythm, and story. Every cut can make or break the film, 1,300 pieces to an invisible puzzle. I can't tell you how many times, I've cut 11 feature films, but each one of those 1,300 cuts, each one of those 1,300 shots, individual shots that exist in a film, are special. And one of them, if one of them is off, it throws everything out of whack. It's absolutely insane to me. And I think we've all had that experience. You're watching a movie and literally one shot or one scene, something happens, and you're totally out of it. You're like, I'm gone. This movie sucks. I'd rather look at my phone. I don't care anymore. Like, it's our job. It's my job as a film editor to make sure there's no bumps in the road. My job is to keep it smooth, elegant, concise, moving forward. And it's really, really hard. And for me, it's always revisiting these 1,300 cuts in a film and pulling from the osmosis of every film I've seen before and keeping my bar really high. When I watch a film that I edit, I'm comparing it to my favorite films. And that's my bar. I'm not saying, oh, it's good enough or it's a good film. Like, I try and make it, to be not eternal, but you know what I mean? It's like, you want the thing that you create to live forever. So I guess that is eternal. So again, I use the right word, but in the wrong way. But I just want it to, I want it to be special, and I want it to be effortless for people to enjoy. And that's not saying a film shouldn't be challenging, because that's a whole other narrative in terms of what your story is trying to tell and what you're trying to share with other people, because that can be challenging. There are films that are just horrifying to watch. You can only watch once, but they're super effective. So there's many, many ways to approach it. But as a film editor, I'm always looking, like I said before, the macro and the micro. There's 1,300 shots in the film. I got to make sure every single shot works with the previous shot, the next shot, and that scene works, and that moment works, and that 20-minute act works, and that whole film works. And it's just revisiting. We were talking earlier that the last feature film I edited, the director and I watched the film 30 days in a row at the end. Every morning at 10 o'clock, we'd watch the film, do our notes. The rest of the day, we'd address the notes. And then the next day, we'd get up and watch the film again. And there's nothing like watching a film completely through, because if you're making it, you can't just watch a scene. You got to watch the whole thing. And you'll start seeing things that make you bump, that make you say like, wait, we should do this and that and the other thing. And then obviously sharing it with other people, sharing your work with your friends, people you respect, is horrifying. It's hard, no matter what you're creating. Like, you want everyone to say, oh, it's great. But you do, honestly, at the end of the day, I want people to fucking tear it up and say, like, this is what doesn't work for me. And I have an ego. Everyone can be narcissistic about their work. But at the end of the day, I think it's most important to hear the criticisms. Don't tell me how fucking good it is. Tell me what doesn't work for you. I can address that. Because at the end of the day, we want it to be as good as possible. And I think that's super important. And so be open to feedback, and don't just give it to people that are going to say nice things about your work. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help anyone. Like, get your shit tore up, like tear it up, and then only good things will happen. Let me bounce through here. This is something interesting. I always thought, like, some of the shots, some films, you think like, oh, it's 100 shots, 1,000 shots. Like, this is just a quick little demonstration of like some of the shots. Airplane, 1980, 691 shots. Inception, 2,700 shots. Like, think about the editor, sitting there with all that footage. This is what my life entails. That's not saying Inception couldn't be accomplished with 1,200 shots, but again, it's pace, it's rhythm, it's timing, it's flow. Film editing is a really, really, it's immersive. And as the film editor, you're watching it. I get the first chance at deciding what the rhythm, the pace, the tempo is after talking to the director or talking to the producer. And that's a challenge, because if you're not on the same page as everyone else, then they're like, what is this? This is not the movie I envisioned. What are you doing? So I think every creative, and for me especially, I love getting on the right page with the producers and directors early and figuring out exactly what they are. And I always ask for what other movie do you like, or what style of film, or anything that I can connect with. Because once I know exactly what they're going after, again, going back to me being adaptable, being an immigrant coming over, not speaking, going to all these different schools, playing sports professionally, and then entering another world, after I retired, it was always me fitting in. And I think that's one of my stronger skill sets in terms of, you put me in a room with anyone, I'll figure out who needs what and what needs to be done, and I'll just get there. And for me, it's always my films, I'll cut the way I want. I find it harder to cut my own films than someone else's, because I know exactly what the other people want, and I don't know sometimes what I want. So my personal projects are all over the fucking place, but for other people, I'm like dialed in. And I don't know if that's, how it works for other people, but that's my process. But again, going back to the original point of osmosis, I try and intake as much as possible. There's endless room in your coconut, and you can pull from that at any time. I think we have
approximately 5 to maximum 10 minutes left
okay.
to talk, and then we'll move on to the questions.
Awesome. I'll just have a couple more slides just to highlight some of this. This is kind of interesting. My last feature film, Six Below, starred Josh Hartnett and Mira Sorvino. And when people ask, like, you're editing, like, whatever, you just like throw some shit together and you're good to go. Well, our first cut was 2 hours and 49 minutes. And that's the extent. This is after like 15 weeks of filming and editing. So I have a cut that's almost 3 hours long, and that's all in everything that's in the script, even some other stuff that we shot, because you always shoot stuff after. The final edit was 1 hour and 32 minutes. So I literally cut a film that was almost 3 hours. And then after watching and making decisions with the director and doing public screenings, we got it down to 1 hour 32. I threw out 1 hour and 17 minutes of fully edited story. And that hurts, because the time it takes to edit that, to make it work, because you could release the movie. I mean, we watched the movie at 2 hours and 50 and it works, but I just don't think, the story, you have to be realistic. So it had to be 1 hour 32 by the time we were done, to cut all the extraneous stuff that really didn't have to be in there. But imagine cutting 1 hour and 17 minutes. That's almost a feature film, or it could be its own feature film. So those are the challenges that editors have. And that's the challenge I have creatively. I start with the long cut, and I love it, and people love it. And then through all the different layers of back and forth and public screenings and notes and stuff, we got down to 1 hour 32. And then I still have dreams. Like I'll watch the film and I'm like, where's that really cool scene? And like, I forgot that I cut it a year ago, and that there's a 10-minute sequence which I would have loved to have seen in the final film, but it's gone. It's in my head, but it's gone from the actual film. Creative chaos. Well, there's my desk. That's what my desk looks like when I was editing. I have my Bible, the script with all the script notes, and then everything after that is just pure chaos. I don't like clean desks. My wife hates my office because it's an absolute fucking gong show. It's like a bomb went off everywhere at all times. But for me, that works. I think everyone's different, but I like a chaotic, crazy space. And this kind of sums up just my thoughts on film editing and creativity, in terms of every edit is the most important decision at that moment. That one decision affects every cut before and after it. That one decision can make or break the entire story, make every cut count. And I think that's my big takeaway, where no matter what you're doing, like, it is the most important thing at that moment, be it for you personally, professionally, creatively, emotionally. I like to focus on the moment, and I like to really just give it my all at all times. But if I can define it down to one thing, then that's it, at that time. So that's just a little peek into my world and what makes me want to get up and create and work and edit and do all that stuff. And if there's any questions, is that enough? Are we good for time, or do we need?
It's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Vashi. So there have been a lot of very good comments. That Alberto said that he's watched Goodfellas like 55 times.
Totally. Oh.
And Steve said it's so funny as he's listening, and he's forced to be editing due to deadline. And also Eloy says, on the other hand, the shot can also pull you in the narrative even further.
Totally.
So I'll move on to questions now. The first question we have is from Jeremy, and Jeremy asks, I'm curious about your perspective on how remote workflows will play a part in post-production once the plague ends. What do you think it will look like for the future?
I think there's going to be a sea change in all of this. I've worked at all the studios for the last 20 years, and their biggest concern was security in terms of footage getting out or a cut being leaked. And I don't know of any editor that would consciously leak something, because there's nothing to gain from it. Like, you don't It's not even about money. Like no one's going to pay you to leak a cut. So they were always concerned. Like on Deadpool, we had 7 edit stations in a locked building off site of Sony. And then Fox wanted some edit bays in their place, and they were worried about security to all the footage. But now, because of the pandemic and everything, everyone I know is editing at home. The safest way that everyone is editing is cloned drives, meaning you have all your footage at the studio. They clone the drives in a big RAID and they deliver it handheld to you. I think the cloud editing will come into play for, obviously, it is in play for commercials and smaller projects, but feature films and the bigger projects, there's still, in my experience, clone drives where there's one copy of it. And like, so if it gets leaked, they know where it came from and it's not up in the cloud. You're not connected to the internet. You're cutting from the footage that you have at home. And the biggest point is trust. If the studio trusts you and you've established that trust, they don't care. Yeah, we want the work done. We want the effects done. All the VFX is being done remotely and always has been. Now the editorial is becoming done by people at home, people in remote studios or offices. It doesn't have to be done on the set, and it doesn't have to be done in Hollywood. You can be an editor anywhere. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, at the end, William said that his assistant editor leaked a film. Passive-aggressive people are dangerous. So
that's, yeah. No, it can happen. Was that someone's like waving? It wasn't you, was it? Someone's waving. That's awesome. I did it. I leaked that. No, you'll get buried. You leak a film and it gets back to you. Your name is mud. You're done. You're done.
So, question from Lori Peterson. Wait. 2 films a day, you say, feature length or some, or there are any short films that you watch as well?
Short films I'll get from what people will share with me. Like, you know, short films are equally as important for the narrative process. And I love a good short film. I prefer, you know, a feature film or an hour-long narrative, something that has something I'm familiar with in terms of concept or whatever. But I like setting aside, two films a day or a film and like an hour-long show on TV. Again, just to fill my brain.
Wonderful. The next question is from Dan. Thank you, Vashi. Can you talk a bit about the compressed creativity needed for your shorter commercial work?
Yeah, it's a completely different muscle skill set. On a feature film, you're working for 9 months, maybe a year, you know, on the long end of it. But I always cut commercials and little smaller projects in between those because everything's ramped up. I cut a VW campaign where it was 4 commercials. Each one was like, you know, 30 seconds or a minute long. We did everything in 10 working days in Los Angeles. And we're talking each spot ended up having 50 different cuts. So I did 200 edits in 10 days with the agency there, with VW there, with the ad agency there. And, you know, a 30-second spot, you're like, how can there be 50 versions? Because every ad agency person is like, I want to see a different shot. And let's swap that shot out. And that's a new version. You iterate. So that's version 1. Then the VW person's like, let's flop that shot, reverse it. That's my contribution. That's version 2. So 4 30-second spots, 50 versions of each one, 200 different versions. And on 3 of the spots, they went with my first take, which was I did 2 or 3 edits off the bat. And 3 of the 4, they went with mine because I was hired to do the job and it was great, but everyone had to justify their job. And that's the difference. Like editors, I'm like, I know what the fuck I'm doing. You're going to tell me to swap one shot or speed it up by 5%. It's never going to make the final cut, but everyone has to justify themselves. That's the other thing about an editor. Politically in the room, I'm a hockey player. I'm an aggressive guy. I have to bite my tongue so fucking often with people. And so I don't lose a job or they want to work with me again. That's the hardest challenge, is like, honestly, being the one that's always under control and able to handle any situation. Not an easy task. Get me out of the edit bay, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. But in the edit bay, you're good. I got you covered. I'm going to deliver. So that's another thing.
Connects to the next question from Yelena. Dear Vashi, how important is rest for you while working on a longer project?
Oh God, that's the only thing I really dream of, like that sleep. I think any creative person, you work until you're exhausted, like all the time. And why do you do that? You do that because you love what you're doing. Like, I get tired, yes, but I'm so proud of my work in most situations where I'll power through that. And I've been on or off kind of person. When I'm on a project or on a feature film or commercial, I'm on 100%. And I tell everyone, you got me 24/7, like to my detriment. And that's not good to have that work-life balance all fucked up where you're on all the time. But when I'm on a project, I'm on. When I'm off, I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to get a text or a phone call from anyone. No email. I'm going to go up to Joshua Tree, hike and sit underneath a bush for a week, and I'll go do that. So if you get me and I'm on a job, I'm fully committed, and you're going to get 100,000% of me. When I'm off, you can't find me. So that's how I try and balance it. I know it's probably not healthy to be completely on and then completely off, but that's how I feel I can give back and commit to the project. And I want to be the person that is remembered at that time. Again, to my detriment, to be like, that fucking guy goes hard. He gives it. I want to be that guy. So it comes with a price, but I want that to surround me as my presence as someone who delivers.
Yeah, it's good to respect your own nature and benefit from it. The next question was from Alberto, and he expressed the will to speak. So Alberto, if you'd like to talk now.
Yeah. First of all, man, brilliant talk. I loved what you said, and it made me feel like I'm not crazy in my world.
We're all crazy, but we're good crazy.
I know.
We're good crazy.
And I love you, man. I love you, and your work is amazing. And now, having heard that you looked at 550 hours of Deadpool, you're a god. So
that's crazy. Yeah, that was crazy.
And I truly believe the osmosis thing, because I came here as a 5-year-old, and I love hockey. We have so many things because I drove the Zamboni for the Kings, and
nice
intensity there, and I played music in the 80s, and I was there. So you have an intensity, and everybody here, I can see it from the folks. There's that love of the passion, and why would you give your babies away, right? And so you have all this stuff coming at you, and you're soaking it up because you need it for the craft. And my question to you is, what do you do internally to filter that out in the middle of it? Because to the detriment of it, I've done, 18, 24 hours. No, it needs to air tomorrow, and then not hanging out, and you're in the trenches, but you also need to rest. Yeah. What do you do internally to sort of filter out so much of that stuff to get
the
to
noise?
To get that creative point. Like, what sort of techniques do you have that, like, I do everything possible that I can, but any more that I can learn is amazing.
Vashi, before you begin, we have just under 10 minutes left and 2 more questions.
Okay.
So
thanks. I'll pace it. I'll try to pace it.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's a really good question. In terms of what I try to do is, like, I try to end the day. There's a writer, I can't remember who the quote comes from, but I try and end the day on something when I know what the next step is. So I'll go, and I won't quit. I won't stop until I know what's going to happen next, because then when I go home, I'm thinking about it. If I go home, if I finish a scene, for example, I'm like, well, I don't want to open a new bin and look at the next scene. I want to finish with something like still tantalizing me. So I'm thinking about it. The hard part is, like you said, I ingest and I use osmosis and I take it all in. And how do I filter it? I honestly, and I don't think it's an answer, but it's like, I let my subconscious figure it out. I know if I put it in there that I can pull something out, and I won't know. You're literally pulling it out of your ass because it's in your head, and I don't worry about it. I'm like, I know if I took it in, I always get this feeling that I'm watching a movie or I'm seeing something, and I'm like, even if I haven't seen the movie, I'm like, I know what's going to happen. Like, I may have seen it 10 years ago, and then it happens. And even in real life, like, something will happen, and it's like, it's something repetitive that I've already lived through. So it's weird. I just put in as much as I can, and I let my brain sort it out. I know that's not, I don't know if that's a teachable technique, but put in as much as you can. And I'm telling you, I always find solutions when I'm not at the edit table or at the edit bay. I'll go home. You're obviously still thinking about it, but there's things happening in the background that I can't explain, but I know I'll come up with a solution. And I honestly think for myself, it's from that ingestion, that osmosis of putting shit in there just to have as a reference. Like, I'm literally I'm a walking encyclopedia of craziness. So I'm trying
That
to.
was brilliant. You totally answered my question. That was brilliant. I totally got it. I'm too much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Alberto.
So 2 more questions left.
Sure.
The next one is from Siegfrieder. I apologize terribly if I mispronounced that. So, is there a world ahead of us where editors give numbered scenes where the viewer selects through metadata, for example, more fighting, more love scenes, longer car chases, etc. So we stop watching the same film, but take material from a selected pool? Maybe just for the film nerds? I don't know, just wondering, or is this world already here and I don't know about it?
There's certain websites I go to like find, again, like I like to make like Vashi frames where I take one frame from every film, and it's 1,500 frames and it's all in a row. And so I can look at a movie, I can see color palettes, I can see the rhythm and timing of a film because there's 1,500 little images of the entire film. Metadata in terms of cameras and organization. Organization is one of the most critical things for editorial, for post-production. I can't sit down and start editing something until everything is set up properly for myself. And I'll do most of it. I'll do as much as I can. And my assistant will bring in the daily footage. And on an average day, it's maybe 5 to 10 hours max of footage that comes into a feature film edit bay every day. But if my project is not organized, then you're going to be buried. You're literally starting off already at the end of the race. The hardest thing, or one of the most challenging thing is when the director comes in, they're like, I want to see this scene or this shot. And if you can't, like, in 3 seconds, go to that bin with that scene, with that footage that's already organized, and they're like, show me the third take, and you can't do that with more than like 4 clicks, then you're screwed, because organization is the basis on editorial success in editorial. You could be the greatest editor, the greatest storyteller, but if your bins and your footage is all just scrambled and you can't find something, then your brain will explode, because you're just spending all this time trying to find it. And if the director or producer wants to see something and you don't know where it is, you won't have another job. That'll be your only job with those people. So with all this talk of creativity,
what about viewers choosing? From what I understood, is you just sort of have this list of folders, and you can
see, like, are we talking like separate scenes, like just having like a scene? I want to watch like car chases.
Do you think there's a future for
I
that?
want a narrative. No, I want a narrative. I want a story to play out in front of me. I want to see romance and crime and chases and double twists. I want to see it all. Like, I think every story needs a little bit of everything. I couldn't focus on just one thing. Like, I just watched car chases all day, I think I'd jump out a window.
I guess maybe you meant like, maybe right now the alternative would be games. There are a lot of games with narratives, and you kind of choose your genre and
correct.
how you fight.
I love the open world video games, the open world where there's no rules, or you don't know what you're supposed to do. You just wander around. Like, I like that. Like, I don't like some of the games where you're in a path where you have to go here and you have no options. Like, I like the open world games myself. Yeah.
We have one last question and like 2 minutes left. Momchilo asks, do you like to work on a couple of projects at the same time?
I find that difficult only because I commit, like we were talking earlier, I commit 1,000% to something. I have had projects where I'll carry over the tail end of it and I'm starting a new one, and I have to have, bottom line is, do you want 2 bosses or 1 boss? 1 boss is hard enough. 2 bosses or 2 directors or 2 teams of producers, that's a lot of people to keep happy. And so I like to do one at a time so I can give it my all and then move on to the next project.